Hey. So the Rebbe was discussing that in the time of Golus, the level of of the neshama is not the Gilui, is not functioning. And we're asking Hashem, Zechoyer Habito, to remember to look down at least in a makif. The makif will impact. But the Rebbe is going to explain now how this Golus in Avodas Ha'odom, what happens is that the bittel itself that is supposed to be becomes in a way that he feels his bittel. And once he feels his bittel, then eventually he loses the bittel and becomes totally not only bittel with yeshus, feeling his self, but becomes a full yesh. The Rebbe says in the creation of the world, we also have this klippa, which is called ru'uma, which is opposite of of kedusha, which we said before was atzilus, chokhmah da atzilus, and you have ru'uma, which is the klippa. Eventually, it descends to becoming ra, and this, as the Rebbe will explain, is also the idea of shefech dam ha'odom ba'odom, that when the person does not follow, do the mitzvahs, which are limbs of Hashem, sort of he cuts off a limb, then the blood pours out to the outside, that goes to the klippah. We'll see inside as the Rebbe will explain this whole idea. Hey, be roinyen to explain this idea, the hine, behold, kishem sheyesh bechinas ma b'kedusha. Just as there is a level of ma in kedusha, which is the nefesh ha'adam, we said before, that's that nitzutz that every Jewish person has from Moshe Rabbeinu, which comes from the level of ma of chokhmah atzilus. So just like there is a level of ma in kedusha, k'mekein yesh bechinas ma b'lu'uma zeh, likewise there is level of ma on the other side. Also, in avodah sa'odom, the forces and the nefesh habahamis from Klippa also has a level of ma. That level of ma opposes the ma of kedusha. U'inyan, that is the idea. Upilakshoy ushmo reuma. It says nocher. The end of Parshas Vayera, he had a pilegesh, and her name is Reuma, Batelet Gami, Estafach Vesmach, Gach Vesmacho, as we read in the Parsha. So you see, the name is Reuma. Reuma. Reuma is Reuma, meaning there too, there is the level of Ma. What is the idea of Ma in Klippa, and what happens from it? Inyan Bazeh. And what's the idea in this that there is Mav Klippa? The Hine Ha'efshoriyus li'inyonim de le'umazeh, the possibility, how could matters of the other side creep in to a yid in his service? Himipnei sheyesh lahem nisinas mokem b'kedusha, is because you give them allowance. You give them space. In Kedusha, you entertain and you let them in. Like we see in the service in the soul. How you allow to creep in the klippas ma, and eventually it goes down that you lose, becomes totally klippa. The kasher Oved Avedose Bebitl. Yes, he is doing his service with subjugation, with self-effacement, with bitl. But it's done in a way shemargish es habitl. He feels that he is self-effacing. He feels his level of self-negation. This becomes a place, allowance, that he should come to the level of Yeshus, real self. No more bittul. Originally, the bittul is with feeling the bittul, but eventually it leads that he is not bittul, he becomes Yeshus, to love Yeshus. V'hainu, shetchila yiyeh habittul be'ofen shel Yeshus. It starts off that the bittul, he's talking bottle, but it's in a way of senses it. It's Yeshus. Zehu inyan klipas re'uma. That's the idea of the clip of re'uma, which means see, I'm bittul. Re'uma, that's the klippa. He's talking bittul, ma, but he shows it's a feeling, it's a sense. Re'uma, that's the key of the beginning of the deterioration, to see the ma. And then he comes to total Yeshus, Shuhura Gomor, which is total evil, completely evil. Because then it's not anymore the level of Bittul B'chlal. So Re'uma is the klippa which begins to creep in, to sense your Bittul, to see Re'uma. This is the way it manifests itself in the service of the person, but the same thing is how the worlds evolve. The al-yidei klipas re'uma, through this klippa of re'uma, shehi kineged olam ha'atzilus, that is the opposite to the world of Atzilus, the le'umazeh, of the world of Atzilus, hine beribu hishtalshelus, through a multiple, many evolved, as it evolved, mistav mizeh, from this branches out, ragomur, total evil comes eventually from that, which is bechinas ma del umazeh. That is the level of ma del umazeh. This is re'uma. This is still opposite atzilus, but eventually it comes down to just ma of klippa. Bechinas ma del umazeh. The Rebbe explains now that this is also the meaning of the posik Ba'al Zeh Nemar, and on this it's written that shofech in the posik, in the posik it talks about if one kills someone, it says shofech dam ha'odom ba'odom yishofech, then the person is supposed to pay the price for murder. But in this case, it says it's not ba'odom, shefech dam ha'odom ba'odom. If you pour the blood of Odom ha'elyon, of Odom to Kedusha, through the Odom of Klippa, so what is this idea of Odom and pouring the blood? So Odom is the level of Ma, the level of Atzilus, of Chochmah Atzilus. We said before, Odom is 45. Aleph Daled Mem is 45, which is the Shem Ma, the Shem of Hashem of Ma. If you pour, which is what? Which is, we learned Chochmah Atzilus, that's the Shem Ma of Hashem, which is in Chochmah Atzilus. If you pour the blood of the Shem Ma through the Odom, Odom is also the level of Ma of Klippa, that you let the Dama Odom from Elyon be poured out through the Ma of Klippas. Blood is energy, that's the life force. Pouring out the blood means that instead of using the limbs to which the mitzvahs and the sinews, the 630 mitzvahs, the two Ramach 248 mitzvahs positive, which correspond to the mitzvahs asay, and the 365 sinews, which correspond. These are the limbs that bring down the chayes of kedusha. And when you cut a limb, the blood pours out. That's the shofech dam ha'odom ba'odom. Let's look inside. The odom b'gematria ma hine al yidei ha'avonos, through sins, who shofech dam ha'odom di kedusha. He ends up pouring, by doing sins, the blood of odom di kedusha. B'chinas ma di kedusha, into Odom Blial, into the evil person, the Klippa Odom, the Odom of Klippa, Shu B'chinas Ma Del Umazet, which becomes the Ma of the other side, the Ma of Klippa. You pour Odom in the Odom, Shefech Dam Odom Bod. What does it mean? You're pouring out the blood. So, because the Rebbe explains the Ramach mitzvahs asay, v'shasa mitzvahs loisaseh, the 248 positive mitzvahs and the 365 prohibitions. Hem keneged, they correspond to Ramach Evorim, to the 248 limbs, v'shasa gidim, and 365 sinews. So what is a limb? Why do we say a mitzvah is a limb? Because a limb, if there is a limb, a person has an aver, that aver draws chayis of the nefesh. A mitzvah draws chayis of Hashem. That becomes the limb of Hashem. The manifestation of the energy of Hashem comes in the mitzvah. That becomes the limb. So just like we see Lamato, the inyan ha'evorim hu, what does a limb do? Shehei mamshichim es hachayis. First of all, they draw down, the chayis comes down into the limb. And also, they block so that the blood should not pour outside. Umagbilin es hachayis shelo yumshach luchutz. They limit the energy, shouldn't extend to the outside. When you cut the limb, then the vitality, the energy goes to the outside, the blood starts gushing. This is the limb. Same thing when you cut a sinew. These are all carrying the blood, the oxygen, the life force from the nefesh. Similarly, as it pertains to the sinews, through them is the movement of the blood. So, if you cut the sinew, the blood starts pouring outside. This is the physical example that when you cut a limb, the energy goes out. The same thing is when we cut the limb by violating a mitzvah. When one violates a positive mitzvah or a prohibition, so then what he causes is that the energy and the blood of kedusha, shoifech dam ha'odom l'chutz, you pour it, and soikev dam ha'odom ba'odom, and it goes into the klippa. That blood is no longer contained in the aver because the mitzvah has been violated, or the loisa says. So the blood, the aver or the sinew has been cut, and the blood goes to the outside, the shoifech dam ha'odom. So this is also the meaning of the pasuk. Talks about when somebody curses Hashem. So, but the pasuk uses the lashon v'noikev shem havaya. You puncture the name of Havaya. The Shem Ma, which is the Shem Havaya spelled out in Ma, gets punctured because a violation punctures it. And there's a gush, there's blood, there is a chayis going to the negative. Why? Shem Havaya Davke, the Nikola mitzvahs tluyim, b'Shem Havaya. All mitzvahs are connected to the name of Yud Kei Vav Shem Havaya. Ukshechota upogam behevides al derech. When one sins and blemishes and passes over the road, the right road, he doesn't go in the right road. By violating one, transgressing one of the mitzvahs of Havaya. So then what you're doing is you're puncturing, you're making a hole in the Shem Havaya because the mitzvah is not being observed, it's not being connected. And the blood goes outside. And through this puncture, you are pouring the blood of the Adam of Kedusha into the Adam Blial. And Vizehu, so we see this is what the pouring did. This is also, we know the Gemara says the story in Gemara in Gittin that when Titus came, Titus the evil, when he destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, he went and he stabbed the Paroiches, that has been the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and it started to gush blood. The Paroiches, what's this idea? So the Rebbe explains now that this was the Eibishter showing Titus HaRosha, it's not his power that he's destroying the Beis HaMikdash. It's the blood that the Jews have caused to be pouring out because they didn't violate, their father didn't do the Torah mitzvahs. They violated the Torah mitzvahs, which allowed for the blood to gush out, and that's why he can destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Not him, but it's the Jews that did it. So it says, this is also what our sages of blessed memory say, Gider Titus es haparoiches, that Titus stabbed the curtain, the yotza mimenu dam, and blood came out of it. Behind us, so what does this mean? This blood is connected to this dam ha'odom, shefich dam ha'odom we were discussing over here, pouring of the blood. Behind us, and that is sheheroloi. They showed him eich efsher liyis inyan hachurban. How could there be this idea of churban? It's not in his own power. It's not that Titus has the power. It is only through the blemish. This took place. It's the blemish that the Yidden caused that took place because they poured the blood. The Odom, the Kedusha, the inner energy of Adam of Kedusha, Adam Blial, into the Adam of the evil, the bad Adam, the level of Klippa. That's why he can destroy the Beis HaMikdash. It's the blood that they have poured, and that's why the Beis HaMikdash is being destroyed, but it's not him and his own power. So basically, now that we're saying, it's not only that we lose the level of Ma, but we've actually swapped it. That from the Ma, which is supposed to be the Ma of the Neshama of Kedusha, we transfer that blood, that energy into the Ma, the Klippa. So this will give us an additional explanation in the verse of Zechoir Havaye Maho Yolonu, Not only that we lost the level of ma, but that we swapped it and we exchanged. And instead of the ma the kedusha, we gave it to the blial. Shefech dam odom ba'odom. Let's look inside. Yes, lefarish oid pirush. Based on this, can explain an additional interpretation b'mashe kosuv in the posik that says Zchoir Havaya Ma Hoyolon. Remember, Hashem, what happened to Ma, which means as unser Ma is geworden Ma del Umase. Our Ma, our level of Bittul B'Metzias, the level of Nitzutz of Moshe. What happened to it? It became Ma of Klippa, Ma Hoyolon. As unser Ma is geworden Ma del Umase. Our Ma became the Ma of the other side. How did this happen? Because first we lost the ma, our ma, and then it swapped it. So there's two interpretation. The first interpretation is we lost the ma. So first we lost the ma, and then we swapped the ma for the ma the klippas. How did your ma become the ma of klippa? Through the previous interpretation, what happened to us to the ma? That the level of ma of kedusha is hidden and obscure. And from this, it involved even lower. That the level of ma of kedusha became the ma of the other side. Similar to the idea of pouring the dam ha'odom into the odom blial, the odom the kedusha into odom blial, and that is what happened. Ma hoyalanu, the second interpretation. First, we are not tapping into that ma; it's obscure, and then eventually it goes to the other side. Vav. Then the pasuk continues. So first we ask Zechor. Pasuk says, "Habito urei escher poseinu." Look and see our shame. What is the idea that we're saying Habito urei escher poseinu? The hine ksiv, the pasuk says there is a shame which is called in the time of exile, and the pasuk says that in the future, in Yeshaya and the Navi, that cherpas al menusayich leisiskiri oid, the shame of the time that you are widowed will not be mentioned again, which means you're not going to ever be widowed. So the shame that we're talking about is the shame that in the time of Golus, we're considered like a widow. And a widow, and as the Rebbe brings down that from the pasuk, that it's not actually widow like a widow. A widow means that her husband died. Like a widow means that the husband is not around. He left overseas. But there is no union between the husband and the wife. The Eberster is compared to the Ish, and Knesset Yisrael is like the woman. And there is no yichud, there's no union, there's no connection between Hashem and the Jewish people in the time of Golus. And in Sfiras, the Rebbe will explain that's when Zoh, which is the masculine, and Nukva, the feminine, Malchus, when there's no Amshocha from Zoh to Malchus in the time of exile, it's called like a Almona. Let's look inside. The Zman HaGolus Nikras Knesset Yisrael B'Shem Almona. And that's the shame. We're called like an Almona. The Moshe Kosu, the Pasuk says, Hoyso Almona. So we say in the Eicha that she was like a widow. So what does it mean, like a widow? Vomer Azal. So the Gemara says in Tainis Chof, Amid Aleph, it doesn't mean like really a widow, but like a widow, which means Ki Isha Shaholach Bailo Lemdinas Hayam. It's like a woman whose husband who went overseas. The Hine Isha he Knesset Yisrael. Isha references Knesset Yisrael. Ubailo Zakodesh Baruch Hu. That's Hashem. So the Isha Shalach Bailo Lemdinas Hayam. What is the idea of a woman whose husband has gone overseas? Hainu shechoser hayichud the Knesset Yisrael im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That we're lacking that union of Knesset Yisrael, the woman, the wife, with Hashem, with the man, with the husband. That means it's like a widow, which they're not together. And how this manifests itself in the Sfiris. The inyan of marriage, when the Eberster is together, when Zov and Nukva are together, Hu Yichud Zov and Nukva. That's the union of Zov, the Sfiris of Atzilus with Malchus of Atzilus. The Isha hi bechinas Malchus. The wife is level Malchus. Ubaylo hu bechinas Zo, and the husband is Zo. The Isha sheholach baylo lemdinas hayam. What does it mean? The husband went to Medinas Hayam. Hainu. That is shebechinas Zo einay nimshach lemalchus. Zo does not extend to Malchus. There's no yichud between Zo and Malchus. Elo. But we're saying it went away. He went overseas. It means instead of going down to Malchus, it goes up to Bina and Chachma. It goes up higher. Elo nistalek libchinas yam hachochma. It removed itself and it went to the level of Chochma. Zo did not misyachet with Malchus, but it goes up to Chochma. Vezo shebizman hagolus. It says in the Zoyar that in the time of Golus, the Eberster HaKadosh Baruch Kuchabrichu Solik Leilo Leilo. The Eberster goes up higher and higher. With the two levels higher and higher, the Eberster goes up first to Bina and then to Chochma. That's Leilo Leilo. Who goes up? Kuchabrichu B'chinazah. That's the level of Zoh. Ubizman Hagolus, but the time of exile, Solik le'elo le'elo. It goes le'elo b'chinas bina. Goes to the level of le'elo is b'chinas chok. So instead of being nimshach from Zoh to Malchus, Zoh removes and goes up to Chochma Bina. V'zeu inyan al mono. And this is the idea of Almon. So, K'moshe Kosuv bepardes she'almona hu almona. Almona is made up, al means no money, no hundred. Normally, when there's hamshocha from Zoh to Malchus through Chochma Bina, Chochma Bina has 50 gates in which the inspiration goes down to Zoh and then it goes to Malchus. 50 down, 50 up, it's 100. That 100 is the Hamshoche that goes from Bina to Zoh to go to Malchus. But when it's an Almona, it's Loimona. You don't have that money. Let's look inside. Which is based Palmim Nun, 2 times Nun. What's the 2 times 50? Ba'ainu Nun Shari Bina, the 50 gates of Bina. Kifi shehem milmata l'maylo. You go through those gates from below to above. Umilmaylo l'mata, through those gates, you're mamshech from above to below. Shal yodam, these gates, through them, nasis halos hamidis, the emotions, the zoh, the character traits of the spheres, the midas, chesed, gvura, tiferes, that's all the midas, go up. V'amshochas eirin sob b'chinas hamidas. So you need 50-50, 50 going up and 50 going down. Shal yidei zeh yumshach l'mato b'chinas hamalchus. That way it goes down to the level of malchus. But we're saying here it's almana doesn't have those 100, those 50-50. It's not coming down. And these journeys, the Rebbe says, that coming down from Bina, these gates, and the Amshocha is also the journeys. This is also the journeys. We're talking about up and down. That means from the source to the journey. That's going from the top to the bottom. And the Rebbe asked the question to Lashonis, and then you have Masayim l'moitzayim as the journey going back up to the source. So inyan halov amshocha, which is the idea of going up and bringing down. This is the idea of the nun sharib in a function. Ach bizman hagolus, but in the time of golus, hu almon shechoser inyan halov. We're lacking the idea of the elevation and drawing down. It's the 50 shorim. Almona, we don't have the 100, the 50-50. That's why it doesn't come down from Zot to Malchus to be the union of Zov and Nukva, because there's no Amshacha from Bina. It's all went up to Chochma Bina, and this doesn't come down. That is the idea that we're saying Almona, that it's lacking the Yichud, and there's Lo Yimona. You don't have that Amshach. And the Rebbe brings down another interpretation in the meaning of Almona. V'oid pirush ba'almona. K'moshekosu b'sefer hasharoshim da'almonu meloshin ilam. In the sefer of Sharoshim explains over there that Almona comes from the Loshin Ilam. Ilam means mute. There's no voice. There's no. The Rebbe is going to explain in a minute. But the Rebbe makes now a point. We call, according to this interpretation, we say Almona because there is Loimona, there's no Yichud. But then it doesn't explain why the masculine, why the male is called Almon. Almona is the woman. So Almona would be also the Loi Mona. She doesn't have that ksuba of an Almona is 100 also. But I've talked before about the gates before, but that also is Loi Mona. But an Almon, it doesn't explain. But when we're teaching now the word Almona from Loshen Ilam, they're both. The Alam Ilm are both. That's why they're called. The man is called an Alma. So hine la pirush Almona u'meloshen Almona, that there is no mona there. Shek subosa mona, because Psulo gets 200, and Almona gets 100. There is loy mona, there is no 100 there. So So why do you call for the male? Why you call him an almon? Uh, because it's all about the woman. She doesn't get the 200. He's the one that gives. It's not, why is he called almon? But the Rebbe says, you have to say, she's called an almon, or we call him an almon. The Rebbe is trying to say, according to the Nupshat, in the Sefer HaShiroshim, it works better. We have to say, Shelefi she'isha nikras almona, because she is called almona, lachem gam zocha nikra almon. That's why we call the male also an almon. Ach, la pirush almona hu meloshen ilim, but according to this other pirush, that it's called an ilim, that he does is mute, osor shapir. Then it makes sense. Then it comes out well. The alam, almona, both ilim. Why? It's not just about her that she doesn't get the ksuba demona, but it's the lashon of silence. The silence is on both ends, on the man and the woman, the almon and the almona, because there's no yichud, so there is no joy. Shagam zocha nikra almon lefi shachoser hasimcha the yichud balim ishtay, because you're lacking that joy of the union of a husband and the wife. So he is Elam, no joy, and she is Alma. So what is the idea of this simcha, the Elam, that there's no simcha over there, and that there's no voice? So the Rebbe explains that in order for your speech, you need a voice, you need a coil. If a person will say with his lips, say all the words, but if there's no voice over there, then you don't hear anything. And if you don't hear anything, you can't speak. And sometimes you also dominate, you control, yadbir, you speak through speech, but you don't have that. Uh, that means that the dibur, which malchus is dibur, is hidden. There's no coil. That's ilay. There was the idea. The kasher meir gilui hakoil b'dibur, when the voice shines openly in the speech, azai hadibur meir b'gilui, then the speech shines revealed, if there's a sound in the dibur. The kasher hadibur meir b'gilui. So when the dibur speech shines begilui, basically when Malchus gets the voice from above and it is shining begilui, azai yadbir amim tachtenu, then dibur, also the lashon yadbir, he will control or dominate nations under us, which means that the Malchus functions properly. The yidei yadbir meloshin dibur nasegam yadbir meloshin hanoga. Also lead a yid when he has also the level of dibur revealed, then he's in control, and then he can dominate and lead his life in a way that he is on the top. She Yisrael Haim b'maylel yoyna, the yidden are on the highest level. Avo kasher ein hakoil begilui, when the voice is not open, azaya adibru behelam begolu, so then the speech is obscure, it's in exile. There's no voice, there's no sound. V'zeu inyan almona meloshin ilim. This is almona ilim. There's no sound, there's no begilu, it's behelam. The koil is behelam. And so this is the second interpretation of almona from loshin ilim, which also fits the almon. And here we ask the Eibishter. So we have Cherpasenu. Our Cherpasenu is what? Is the Cherpas Almanusayich. That we're not mamish a widow, but we're like a widow, Kealmana, which husband has gone away, and we don't have that voice, we don't have that power, and we don't have the 50, the 100, as the Rebbe explained. So we're saying to Hashem, we're asking, Habito reis cherpasenu, look and see our shame that we're like the almana. So what's going to happen when the Eibusher is going to see? Even though it's from a distance, it's makif. Ta'af sha'abota, hu b'chinas makif, even though this is in the way of surrounding. Mikol mokoyim, harei ze moyil gam b'pnimiyus. This helps also in an inner. We find that even when there is a makif influence, a surrounding influence, it can still impact the inside. And as the Rebbe said earlier, we'll say again, it can certainly disrupt Mamer Eileh Masei. But the Rebbe brings first the example that we say that when there is a shade, when Hashem is a shadow, provides this shade is a makif, that still saves you. And that's why we say the av haboto b'chinas makif mekol mokoim haraz moil gam b'pnimius. It also then k'meshu kosuf ki hava yelikecho mishalach b'kerev machanecho lehatzilcho. Hashem, your God, is walking amongst your camp lehatzilcho, to save you, to provide a shade for you. So we see that even though it's only a shade, it still protects you. Latzilcha, hainu liyos tzeil al roshcha. Latzilcha means to be a shade over your head. Shubchinas makif. So, notwithstanding that it's tzilcha, it's a shade over your head. Umekol mokoim, that is becomes latzilcha to actually save you. Na'asal yidezeh latzilcha kipshutei, to literally save you. Melosh natzola, save you. So that's impacts even on the inside in the person's avodah. But certainly to get rid of some of the outer disturbances of the person. Ubifrat, especially b'negeya lepu'ula ala klippus, especially impacting on the klippus, which is to get rid of the external of the disturbances. So then that makif light can blind the eyes of Chetzenu, as said before. So now, v'zeu mashekosuf, and this is what the pasuk says. Remember Hashem Mahoyalonu. We're asking Hashem for some amshocha, for some help over here. The Hine, and we said before in the Maamar from the Medrash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Toveya Mi Yisrael. What does the Eibishter demand from the Yidden? Zechoir es Beiracha Bimei Bacharusecha. Remember Hashem in your youth, or as the Medrash we brought down Taich before, in the day that you were chosen. Remember Hashem in the good days, the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Becharusecha, your youth, when you were Bechira, when you were chosen. As we said, Ache Beis Hamikdash Kayom, while the Beis Hamikdash was still in existence. Remember Gadol Shenikra Beis Hamikdash, that's called the house of the chosen. That was Becharusecha. Ache Bris Kuna Kayemis, while there was still the covenant of Kuna existed. While there was still the covenant of Levi in existence. So the Eibishter is demanding us, while the Eibishter is there in the time of the Beis HaBechira, remember me. Zecheres Baracha, remember your Creator. And what does Hashem want? As the Pasuk continue, V'atviya, the demand is Asois Mishpat, do justice, V'ahavas Chesed, and love kindness, V'atznei Eleches im Elekecha, and walk with God modestly. That's what He's asking you to do while the Beis HaMikdash is there, or that type of avodah. Hatznei Eleches. It has to be done with modesty. If you start with Ru'uma, oh, see my bittul, that's the beginning of the fall. Achasher chosro ha'avodah. That's ne'eleches, when there's lacking the service of walking with modesty. She'yepech ha'inyan. The Ru'uma, this is opposite. Walking modestly is just the opposite. Look, my bittul. A bittul with yeshes. Walking modestly is contrary to Ru'uma. So what happens? Then we have a destruction. Then we have, so Zecheres Baracha in the time of Beis HaMikdash Kayim means when things are well, when there's a Gilui, use the Ma. Don't be Ru'uma. Be Hatznei Leches. If you're lacking the Hatznei Leches, then you bring about destruction. Then you bring about the Ma of the other side. That's why we ask now. Look, Hashem, what happened to our Ma? Shehama de Kedusha, who behelen v'hester, that the Ma of Kedusha is hidden and blocked. V'ad shal yidei zeh nase hama del umazeh. Through this, eventually, the Ma of Kedusha is blocked. It's the first pshat, Ma ho'yalon of the Baal Shem Tov. The additional pshat that we shefech dam ha'odam ba'odam, we gave it to Lumazeh. Look, we're asking Hashem, see our shame. We don't have, we're like an almana. And we're asking Hashem, we shouldn't have to be the shame of our almonas, of not being able to have that koil, to have the inspiration, to have the amshochet. There should be the yichud of Kuchabrichu and Malchus, and Malchus. And the Rebbe is going to circle back now to the beginning of the Mamer, to Eileh Masei. That the reason we had the Eileh Masei b'nei Yisrael, they had threaded through all these masois when they were going in the midbar, with all the challenges, and that should help us through their subduing the klippos while they were in the midbar, to give us the koyach to overcome Zechoir Hashem and Habitur Eicha Prasein, as the Rebbe continues. Zehu Mashikosuf Ve'eileh Masei b'nei Yisrael asher yotzu meretz Mitzrayim. The Rebbe asked before, it says that the journeys of the Bnei Yisrael, that they've gone out of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, the only one out with one journey. And the Rebbe is going to explain, as long as we don't come to Yarden Yerechei, to the avodah, which is l'mayla mitam vadas, you're still in Mitzrayim. Still limitations. So all the masos are going out of Mitzrayim. Kol hagoluyos nikroim Mitzrayim. All exile are called Mitzrayim. Meaning, even after going out of Mitzrayim, we're all always still in Mitzrayim. Because Mitzrayim, why is every Golus called Mitzrayim? We're in Ashur, in the other Golus, you say. So how can we still call it Mitzrayim? Because Mitzrayim means limitation. Mitzrayim lo shemeitzer gevul. It's boundaries and limitation. Va'ad sheboim liyardin yerechei. Until you come to Yardin Yerechei, which is the highest level, which is the level of service of Hashem, higher than Tam Vadas, because you have hearing, seeing, and smelling. A hearing is connected with understanding, and so is even visualizing with Chokhmah, with Bina. But till you come to higher than Tam Vadas, that's a smell, which is the higher Das. Until you come to the level of a harichai, to the level of smell, you're still in Mitzrayim, you're still limitations. Till come to Yardin Yerechei Loshen Reach, which is al avodah shelamayla metamadas. The avodah of Reach is beyond reason and rationale, to the avodah higher than any limitation of intellect or reason. You're still in a boundary, you're still in a limit. In the future redemption through Mashiach, then we will have this level will be revealed, the level of Reach, but that's why up till then, Kol HaGolus, you're still in Mitzrayim, because you're still in limitation. Or the Olav, as we say about Mashiach, that not from what he hears will he prove. That's not going to be the evidence. And not even to what he sees. He'll have a smell of the fear of Hashem. The Meirach V'doin, he's going to smell and judge. It's going to go by the level of Reach, which is Makifim Shalamayla Mechochmo Bina. That's the Makifim, which is higher than Chochmo Bina, above any limitations. So until you get to there, you still are in Mitzrayim. That's why Masois. Who inyana Masois, you still got a journey. Go out of Mitzrayim. Avodah shebe hamasois. So what's the work in these journeys that we're journeying? Hainu b'yirida sanishoma v'yislapshusa b'meitzer haguf b'chlal. Generally, the journeys begin when the soul comes down to the body. It's a limitation. It's a mitzrayim. And you start your journey when you come down, the neshama in the body. That's generally the neshama in the body, especially in Golus, or b'frat bizman hamitzorim. Bizman, the time of limitations, halamas v'astatim sheba'golius, and the blocks, the obscurity, which is in the exile within this world. So first, the neshama coming down to the world already is Mitzrayim, but especially coming down to the Mitzorim, Halamas v'Estadim, in the Goliaths. How do we do the avodah in these journeys? In anesinas koyach al zeum b'chinas moitzaeyim. Moitzaeyim lemaseyim. How do we go? Because the source, the moitza, where we come from, helps us with our journey. Moitzaeyim lemaseyim. B'chinas moitzaeyim. Loshen, what is the meaning of moitzaeyim? Meaning the source of the water. Kemoitzemayim asher lo yechazvu meim, like the source where water comes out, whose water never falter, never die, which means it's always alive, it's always true. That's the source. So the moitzaeyim, the source, gives us the maseyim, which is, at the end of the day, the source, v'etzem haneshama, the mashab haneshama, that's the moitzaeyim, that's the source. That gives us the koyach. V'al-yidei hamshochas mimoitzaeyim maseyim, by drawing down from moitzaeyim, from our source, to Masoi, from the etzem haneshama, from the Moshe in our neshama, from the Maam the neshama, שנעשה זה על ידי בחינת מוישה, שבכל אחד ואחד מישראל. That becomes through the Moshe in every yid. And that's why the Pasuk says, Vayichtav Moshe Mamer Eileh Masei. Moshe writes down, is the koyach of Moshe from the Mitzrayim to the Masei. Nizgal b'chinas ma gam b'neshama shebeguf. That's the way of the ma, the etzem neshama, is also revealed in the body. Ba'al yidei zeh oived avidosoi. That you do your service of the masois to bring down from the etzem neshama to help you in your masayim, in your journeys, to go out of Mitzrayim in every level till you come to Yerechim, to the higher level of Mashiach. V'ha'avodah hi ha'nesiya v'ha'lo v'mato l'maylo. So you bring down moitzo'eyem l'maseyem. You take the etzem neshama to help you with your journeys. But then what you do is, the avodah is to bring and elevate yourself, masei l'motzeim, to go back to his source. V'ha'avodah hi ha'nesiya v'ha'lo v'mato l'maylo. We have both. That's what we have in the Mitzay l'maseyim, masei l'motzeyim. Memaseyim l'motzeyim. So these are the explanation of the etzem neshama helping us with our masois, and masois leading, and our avodah leading us back to motzeyim. And the Rebbe brings us down, and literally, what it was, the literal avodah. The literal avodah of the Yidden was in the desert, in Midbar Amim. And their service then gives us koyach now. Well, we can't take out the pasuk from its literal. Literally, what is the journeys that we're talking about? Here we're talking about journeys in Golus, in exile, in the Neshama, in the Guf, in the limitations. But the pasuk means the literally journeys. Hamasoes shuldeir hamidbar b'midbar ha'amim. That is the journeys of the generation of the Midbar in the Midbar of the nations. So that's the posik. And those journeys actually are the impetus how we can go through our journeys. The fact that the person has the ability gilui, to draw down the ma of the neshama openly, and to overpower his body and his animal soul. We have this koyach. Where do we get it from? Especially in the time of Golus. And now the generation of the hills of Mashiach, and where there is tremendous difficulties. A darkness which is doubled and quadrupled. The time of many challenges and tests that we have to go through. Canal. How do we do? Who al yidei ma'isa ovis. We have the power through the action of our fathers. Sheichniu moker haklipis. They subdued the source of the klipis. Al yidei shenosu v'chonu b'midbar ha'amim. They traveled. They camped in the Midbar Amim. Midbar Amim was Nochosh Sorov Akrov. There was the snake, the scorpion, the snake, and the Sorov and the scorpion, and they journeyed over there. And what happened when they journeyed? Vayibin Soya Orin, Moshe, so Moshe is there. All the enemies, the Oivim and the Mesayim, were scattered and ran away, which means they subdued the Klippas. So from that koyach, from the Maisa Ovis that the Deir HaMidbar did then, Kipshutei, Kam HaAnofim, also the branches, we are branches of those Ovis. You, or the branches of these Klippas, they too will be subdued. Alidei HaOdom, B'meshach Kol HaDoidus, through the man in all generations has the power to subdue them. Alidei Asher Vayichtav Moshe, through the Moshe writes down. Each and everybody has his Moshe written down. es moitzaehem lemasei, their shoyresh in their journeys, and Mamer Eileh Masei lemoitzaehem, to bring out the Maseim to their source. V'hainu al derech klal uprat, similar to a klal uprat. I think a klal was by the midbar, when they said, "We're the prat, the anofim." Ada sheyovoyu liyardin yireche, till we come to the level of yardin yireche. Meirach v'doim b'avedosi b'frat. In your own individual, you have the klal to come to Mashiach, to Yemesa Mashiach, but with your own avodah to come to the level of Mailu Matam Vadas. Meirach v'doim b'avedosi b'frat. So that's the prat. Achakach legeula haklolis. And then that brings you to the general redemption. Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, the coming of righteous Mashiach. Over there, in a general, Shaloi lemashma oznov yechiach, not to what he hears will he prove. Loi lemare einov yishpat, won't judge by what he sees. Kim verich yichai beyiras Hashem, but he will have the smell in a mile betavadas moirach v'doin. He will judge by a smell. Begeula hasida, in the future redemption, lovoi b'meiro b'yameinu, speedily in our days.